Everyone was too busy to notice the tired woman with the crying toddler by the side of the road, except Jake. Jake had just finished changing the oil on a 1999 Ford Taurus when he heard the unmistakable rattle of a struggling engine outside his garage. He wiped his hands on a dirty rag and looked up. The old blue sedan barely made it into the parking lot before giving a final sputter and dying completely. Behind the wheel sat a young woman, mid-30s, hair pulled into a rushed ponytail, eyes weary with something deeper than exhaustion. A baby was crying in the back seat. The woman looked like she was holding back tears herself. Jake stepped outside, the summer sun baking the cracked pavement beneath his boots. "Need some help?" he called, his voice gentle. The woman hesitated before stepping out. "It just stopped. I was trying to make it to my second job. I can't be late again." Jake nodded. "Pop the hood. I'll take a look." She opened the hood, and Jake leaned in. The engine was bone dry, belts worn thin, oil leaking slowly from the side. He let out a low whistle. "How long's it been since your last service?" he asked. She looked embarrassed. I can't remember. My ex left us with nothing. It's just me and my daughter now." Jake didn't ask more. He didn't need to. He saw enough every day in this small town to know when someone was drowning. He straightened up. "Leave it with me. I'll see what I can do." Her eyes widened. "But I can't afford anything right now. I was just hoping it could get me to work." Jake offered a kind smile. "We'll work something out." What she didn't know was that Jake spent the rest of that day and half the night getting that car running. New belts, oil change, brake fix, even a new battery, parts from his own stock, no charge. He left the keys in the drop box with a note. "You're good to go. Just take care of that little girl." Jake never expected to hear from her again. He wasn't looking for thanks. But 10 days later, a sleek black limo rolled slowly into the dusty lot of Jake's humble garage. The windows were tinted, the tires spotless, and the man who stepped out was dressed in a tailored black suit, sunglasses gleaming. Jake looked up from under a car, confused. He wiped his hands and stood. The man said just 5 words. "Are you the man who helped her?" Jake furrowed his brow, unsure how to answer. He glanced at the limo, then back at the man in the suit. "Helped who?" The man removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that didn't match the cold sharpness of his appearance. They were tired eyes, kind ones. Emily, the woman with the blue sedan, and her daughter. Jake's face softened slightly. "Yeah, I helped her. Car was in bad shape. She had a kid in the back seat. Didn't seem like she had many options." The man nodded slowly, like he was confirming something he already suspected. "She told me what you did. She cried when she talked about it." Jake didn't know what to say. He never fixed cars for praise. He fixed them because he could. Because sometimes people just needed someone to give a damn. "I didn't do much," he muttered, reaching for the rag in his back pocket. "Just patched her up so she could get to work." "You did more than that," the man replied. He took a few steps closer, and Jake noticed the way his shoes didn't belong in a place like this. Not with grease stains on the floor and old tires stacked in the corner. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You her brother or something?" The man let out a small chuckle. "No, I'm someone she used to help, a long time ago." That threw Jake off. He stared, trying to put the pieces together. The man noticed and added, "She used to volunteer at a shelter downtown. Brought food every Thursday. No one ever asked her to. She just did it." Jake's jaw tightened slightly. He hadn't known that part of her story. He remembered how worn her shoes looked, how her hands trembled as she handed him the keys that day. She had nothing, and still, she gave. The man continued. "Back then, I just lost everything. Divorce, business failure, bankruptcy. She didn't know who I was, and she didn't care. She treated me with kindness I hadn't felt in years." Jake nodded slowly. the weight of the story settling on him like dust. Guess she's always been that kind of person. The man took a deep breath and looked around the shop. You fixed her car, for free. You didn't ask questions, you just helped. Jake shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. There was a long pause. Then the man said, Can I show you something? Jake hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. He followed the man to the limo. The driver opened the back door. Inside wasn't what Jake expected. There was no bar, no champagne, no flashing lights. Just a briefcase sitting neatly on the seat. The man reached in, pulled it out, and popped it open. Stacks of papers. A file. A check. I run a foundation now, the man said. Small grants for mechanics, veterans, people like you who quietly change lives without asking for anything. Jake blinked. You're kidding. I'm not. The man handed him the check. Jake stared at it, his fingers hesitating. Then his eyes widened. It was for $50,000. No way, Jake whispered. The man smiled. Emily didn't ask me to do this. But when she told me what you did, how you stayed late, how you gave your own parts, how you didn't let her feel ashamed, I knew I had to come. Jake looked up from the check, stunned. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, the man replied gently. Just keep doing what you're doing. The world needs more Jakes. Jake shook his head in disbelief, still holding the check like it might vanish if he blinked too hard. I didn't do it for this. I know you didn't, the man said. That's exactly why you deserve it. Before Jake could respond, the man climbed back into the limo. The door shut quietly. Within seconds, the car eased out of the lot, tires barely making a sound on the dusty gravel. Jake stood there, alone, the check in one hand, grease still on the other. The sun was starting to dip, throwing a golden light across the old garage. He looked around at the worn floor, the shelves of parts, the photo of his late father tacked above the workbench. Then he looked back at the empty space where the limo had just been, and for the first time in years, Jake felt something shift in his chest. Not pride, not luck, but purpose. He folded the check slowly, carefully, and slid it into his pocket. Then, he walked back into the shop, picked up his tools, and got back to work. Because that's what Jake did. He fixed things, quietly, patiently, but now, maybe, just maybe, someone was fixing something in him too. Jake stood frozen for a second, the check still folded in his pocket like a secret too big to carry. The whir of the limo had faded down the road, but the weight of what just happened hadn't gone anywhere. He looked around the shop, the same cracked floor and creaky tools, but everything suddenly felt different. Later that evening, after the garage was locked up and the last light shut off. Jake sat on the hood of a junked car in the back lot. The sky was turning orange and pink, the way it always did in summer, but tonight it felt like it meant something. He pulled the check out again, just to make sure it was real. It still didn't make sense. 50 grand. Just like that, he thought. About Emily, about her shaking hands, her kid crying in the back seat, the way she kept apologizing even though none of it was her fault. And then the man, clean suit, clean words, talking about her like she was the one who saved him. Jake ran a hand through his hair and let out a slow breath. The next morning, he was back at the shop before sunrise. The smell of oil and coffee filled the air. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. He didn't tell anyone about the limo or the check, not even his buddy Rick, who came by most mornings for coffee and gossip. Jake just got back to work. But something strange started happening. People were showing up who'd never come around before. A young woman with a kid asked if he could look at her brakes. Emily said you were good people, she whispered. Jake nodded and checked them for free. A high school kid came in with a busted bike chain and no money. Jake fixed it anyway. One guy came in with a job offer. Wanted Jake to manage a bigger shop in the next town over. Jake said no thanks. He liked his little corner of the world. He liked knowing the people who walked through his door. He did, however, make one change. He hung a small sign above the counter. It wasn't flashy, just a plain wooden plaque with 4 words burned into it. Pay it forward, always. The days rolled on, and Jake kept doing what he'd always done, helping where he could, fixing what was broken, staying out of the spotlight. But now people were watching, not in a bad way, in a quiet, grateful way. A few weeks later, a letter showed up in the mail. No return address. Just his name, scrawled in neat handwriting. Inside was a photo. Emily, her daughter. The suited man from the limo, all smiling in front of a small new apartment building. The note on the back said, "We're okay now. Because of you." Jake stared at it for a long time. Then he put it up on the wall next to the workbench, right below the photo of his dad. Later that day, another customer came in. A young guy, flustered, trying to get to a job interview, but his car wouldn't start. Jake didn't ask questions. He just wiped his hands, grabbed his tools, and said, "Let's get you on the road." Because that's what Jake did. Not for money, not for recognition, just because someone once needed help. And now, so did someone else. Jake stared at the man for a second, trying to piece it together. Helped who? But something in the man's posture told him this wasn't a casual visit. He slowly pulled the rag from his pocket, wiped the grease off his hands, and nodded. "I might be. Who's asking?" The man cracked the slightest smile. "Get in. We need to talk. F yeah." Jake blinked. "I don't just get into random limos with strangers in suits, man. You'll need to tell me more than that." "Fair enough," the man said, removing his sunglasses. Behind them were sharp, intelligent eyes that held a trace of something. Familiar. Pain, maybe, or gratitude. "My name's Marcus Langston. I'm her brother. You fixed my sister's car when she had no one else." Jake took a breath. He hadn't expected to see anyone related to the woman. He'd honestly forgotten what she even looked like. He helped people when he could. That was it. Marcus went on. "You didn't ask her for money. You didn't shame her. You just did it. People don't do that anymore." Jake shrugged. "Wasn't a big deal." Marcus nodded slowly. "Well, it is now." He motioned to the open door of the limo. Against his better judgment, curiosity got the better of Jake. He walked over and climbed in. Inside, it was quiet, cool, almost surreal. Jake sat stiffly on the leather seat as the driver pulled away from the garage. "Where are we going?" Jake asked. "Someplace I think you'll like," Marcus replied. They drove through parts of the city Jake had never even seen. Clean sidewalks, towering glass buildings, and streets that shimmered in the afternoon sun. Finally, they pulled up to a sleek office building with a minimalist sign that read, "Langston Foundation." "What is this place?" Jake asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he led Jake inside, nodding to the security guard, who opened the door without question. Inside, a receptionist greeted them with a warm smile. "Mr. Langston, everything is ready in the boardroom." Boardroom? Jake followed Marcus down a hallway lined with framed photos, community projects, food drives, scholarships. They stopped in front of a glass door. Marcus pushed it open. Inside, a long table, a screen on the wall, and 3 people waiting. A woman in a blue blazer stood as they entered. Jake recognized her immediately. It was the same woman from the garage. Her hair was brushed back now, clean clothes, a little less tired, but those same kind eyes. "Hey," she said softly. Jake smiled, surprised. "Hey, you okay?" She nodded, her voice catching. "Because of you." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "We wanted you to hear it from us. My sister, her name's Leah. She's been trying to get back on her feet since her divorce. It's been hell, but what you did, it gave her hope. Real hope. Leah stepped forward. I told Marcus what you did. He's got the kind of resources I don't, but I told him. That man, he didn't just fix my car. He made me believe good people still exist. Jake looked down, uncomfortable with the attention. Like I said, it wasn't a big deal. Marcus leaned forward. But it was. We're launching a new program. Free vehicle repairs for single parents and low-income families. We're calling it Jake's Garage. And we want you to run it. Jake blinked. What? Full salary. Full staff. You get to decide who gets help. No red tape. We fund it. You bring your heart. Jake sat back, stunned. He didn't know what to say. For years he'd scraped by, doing what he could in his little corner of the world. And now someone was asking him to scale that up? Why me? He asked finally. Leah answered, because you didn't do it for recognition. You did it because it was right. That's exactly the kind of person who should be leading this. Jake looked at her, then at Marcus, then back at the door. Part of him wanted to run. This was too big, too much. But another part of him, the part that stayed up late fixing a stranger's car without payment, knew this was what he was meant to do. He cleared his throat. All right, but only if I can still wear my overalls. Laughter broke the tension. Leah smiled through tears. Marcus extended his hand. Deal. Jake shook it, a little overwhelmed, but deeply moved. The boy who grew up fixing bikes in his dad's dusty garage had just become the heart of something bigger. And in that moment, Jake realized something. Sometimes, doing one small, quiet thing can echo louder than you ever imagined. Back at his old shop, the door remained closed. A sign hung on it now. Moved to Jake's garage, bigger lot, same heart. But Jake still visited sometimes. Still kept it clean. Still remembered the moment a tired woman pulled in with a broken-down car and unknowingly changed both their lives. Jake stood by the wide bay doors of the new shop, watching the sunlight spill across the polished concrete floor. Jake's Garage wasn't just a name anymore. It was real. A fully outfitted repair center with 6 workstations, a waiting area with toys for kids, and a big bulletin board covered with thank you notes and photos from families they'd helped. There were pictures of single moms hugging their kids, elderly veterans shaking Jake's hand, and kids proudly standing beside freshly fixed bikes. It had only been 6 months since the program launched, but already the place had become a hub of hope. Jake wasn't just fixing cars anymore. He was helping people breathe easier, helping them get to work, to school, to doctor's appointments. He was keeping lives moving. He didn't have to worry about rent anymore. He didn't have to scrounge for parts or turn people away. Marcus had made good on every promise. The foundation covered everything: parts, salaries, insurance. Jake just had to do what he was already doing: care. But it wasn't all smooth. Some days were heavy, like when a woman came in sobbing because her car had broken down on the way to visit her son in the hospital, or the young father who'd been sleeping in his vehicle with his toddler and just needed it to run one more week so he could get to job interviews. Jake heard stories that stuck to him, stories he took home and sat with. Some nights he couldn't sleep, but he never regretted listening. One morning, Jake found himself staring at an old photograph someone had pinned to the wall. It was a candid shot. Him in his oil-stained overalls, leaning under a hood, with a little girl peeking from the back seat. Leah had taken it the day he fixed her car, before all this began. The memory hit him hard. That quiet moment when he was just doing what he thought was right, now hung like a symbol of everything that followed. Just then, Marcus walked in, dressed like always, smart suit, purposeful stride, but with a softness that only showed when he was around Jake. He clapped a hand on Jake's shoulder. "You good?" Marcus asked. Jake nodded, wiping his hands on his rag. "Busy day. Got that single mom from West Side coming in with her van. She's got 3 kids and a busted radiator," Marcus smiled. "You're still remembering every detail." Jake chuckled. "I remember the people, not the parts." They stood in silence for a moment before Marcus added, "You know, we're getting attention. Other cities want to replicate this. Philly, Detroit, even LA. People are watching what we've built here." Jake raised a brow. "That's great. But I'm not moving to LA, man. I like my coffee burnt and my sandwiches messy." Marcus laughed. "Don't worry, no one's asking you to leave. They just want to learn. And I think you should tell your story." Jake stiffened. "Nah, I'm not some TED Talk guy." "You don't have to be. Just be you. That's the whole point. You're not a brand. You're a reminder that decency still matters." Jake didn't respond right away. He glanced out the garage doors, where a woman was pulling up in a rusty old Toyota. 2 kids sat in the back, wide-eyed. "I'll think about it," Jake said. Marcus nodded. "That's all I ask." Later that afternoon, Leah stopped by. She visited often, sometimes just to sit and chat between meetings or help in the waiting area. She brought donuts this time, cheap ones from the corner store, but Jake swore they tasted better than anything gourmet. "You never let me pay for my oil changes," she teased as she set the box down. Jake grinned. "You paid in donuts. That's currency around here." They sat on overturned crates, watching as a teenager helped one of the newer mechanics bleed brakes on an old sedan. Jake had started hiring folks who reminded him of himself. Kids with rough pasts, ex-cons, dropouts, people with talent and heart who just needed a shot. Leah looked around the garage, eyes soft. "You changed my life, Jake. You know that, right?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. "You give me too much credit." "No," she said firmly. "You gave me back my dignity that day. I was at the end of my rope. You didn't just fix my car, you treated me like a human being." Jake met her gaze. There was nothing romantic between them, just a deep, abiding respect. A kind of soul connection that didn't need to be defined, and he appreciated that. "You would have made it either way," he said. "I just gave the battery a jump." She smiled. "Well, that jump changed everything." As dusk settled, the last car of the day rolled out, and the team began cleaning up. Jake walked to the edge of the garage, leaned against the doorway, and watched the sky change color. The city buzzed in the distance, but here it was quiet. A young boy, maybe 10, ran up the driveway, holding a note in his hand. Jake turned to him. "Hey, what's up, little man?" "My mom said to give this to you." The boy handed Jake a folded piece of paper. Jake opened it and read, "Dear Jake, you don't know me, but you helped my cousin fix her car last week. She was crying when she got home, not because she was sad, but because someone finally showed her kindness. She said it made her feel human again. Thank you for being that person." Jake folded the note gently, then looked at the boy. "Tell your mom and your cousin I said thank you." The boy nodded and ran off. Just as the streetlights began to flicker on, Jake stood there a while longer, thinking about how a simple favor had sparked all of this. He didn't feel like a hero. He still hated paperwork, still preferred wrenches to microphones. But maybe that was the point.